So starting as you like it. I hope you read read the introduction. The introduction does give a lot of background information regarding Shakespeare's sources. Probably the most important being the one mentioned by Thomas Lodge, Euphues or his Golden Legacy, which was written, it's in there, 1680 or so. And what Lodge was doing in that book is, one, he's creating and or emphasizing a literary style which is extremely ornate. Just all kinds of flowery language, a lot of descriptive use. And it harkens back to kind of earlier, well, obviously much earlier Roman writing, kind of writing, for example, by Cicero and some others. But it's there that we get the general story of Rosalind or Rosaline. It can be pronounced either way because it can rhyme either way in Shakespeare's day. It can rhyme with wind and it can rhyme with wind. Okay. As with Midsummer Night's Dream, you have two settings, but in the two settings are the city or town or court, if you want. Usually it's at the court of Duke Frederick, is when it's there. And the other one is the Forest of Arden. So you have Duke Frederick's court. And this time, unlike in Midsummer Night's Dream, the forest is named. The Forest of Arden, okay? The overall setting of the play is where? That is, these are both located in what geographical location? France, okay? You're gonna hear a character make a comment about the stories of Robin Hood in Sherwood Forest and stuff. But you're also going to have some indications that it is in France. And one of those indications is, look at the names. Most of them are French. Okay? Now, an interesting little thing about the Forest of Arden, Shakespeare's mother's name was Mary Arden, and there was a forest named Arden Forest outside and the name Arden Forest is related to her family name. Shakespeare's family on both sides goes way back. They are long-lived families in Warwickshire, and the Ardens were fairly well off. Okay, but in France, it's the Ardennes, famous site of a World War I military battle. Okay. The settings serve not quite the exact same purposes as they did in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Remember, in A Midsummer Night's Dream, the wood serves what purpose? What kinds of things does it symbolically represent?
Disorder, misrule, instability.
Exactly, all those kinds of things. Misrule, lack of rationality, imagination, fantasy, chaos, etc. Court of Theseus or Athens represents everything that Athens represents in the real world. Birth of civilization, kind of, birth of law, birth of reason, philosophy, all those kinds of things. Here, what does Duke Frederick's court represent? How far have you gotten into this? Anybody? Couple acts? All of it? Okay. We'll probably only get through, well, Act 2. I'd really like to get through Act 3, but we'll see. What does Duke Frederick's court represent?
High society.
Okay, what else?
really backstabbing because you, that's all they're doing the whole play.
Compare it with Theseus's court. You don't get any of that in Theseus's court. Theseus's court is kind of the perfect model of civilization. Okay? Everybody gets along well, seemingly. In this court, to use your exact terms, backstabbing. It's Duke Frederick's court, right?
He literally banished his brother.
It should be Duke Senior's court. Rephrase that. Before the play opens, it was Duke Senior's court. So what are we told almost immediately upon the opening? I mean, it's within the first act.
He's a usurper.
He's a usurper. Okay? Is a usurper ever good? No. No. Because a usurper always goes against, think of that great chain of being, always goes against that great chain of being. A usurper is one who's on a lower link and who wants to take up another link or take over another link. And if you want, I'm not saying that you should, but you can trace that idea, you can go all the way back and trace that idea. I've been living in the South too long. That idea of usurper to the original usurper. What am I talking about? Satan. I will place my throne above the Most High. Okay? And it's even takes the place of a brother. And therefore we have, just outside the Garden of Eden, the first, okay? I mean, these things are all interlinked, all right? So, that's Duke Frederick's court. And what do we see in the literally opening speech? It's not about Duke Frederick and Duke Senior. It's about non-Duke Orlando and his older brother, non-Duke Oliver. And what has happened? Has Oliver usurped Orlando? No. But what has he not done?
Given his birthright.
He's broken the ties of brotherhood. It's a form of fratricide. It's not a literal fratricide, killing of brothers. Like fraternity.
I've never heard that.
Yep. There's another term for sisters, and I can't remember what it is. It's not sistercide.
Sororicide?
I guess it would probably be something like that. If you might have just created it. Okay? So, that's this. Now, notice, take that great chain of being idea. And so, a link has been broken. What, therefore, symbolically happens to everything beneath that? It's out of order. It's because of what Duke Frederick did to Duke Senior that there are ripples down the chain. Oliver, Orlando. Okay? Now go to the Forest of Arden. Is the Forest of Arden ruled by chaos here?
No, it's peace, tranquility, pastoralism.
It's more akin to what? Take those images and go backwards. It's like a paradisal garden. Everybody lives how? Well, modify that. Almost everybody lives how? In this forest. I have to say always, because there are things that happen that, in order for the humans to live here,
It's almost utopic.
it's very utopic, but Jaques has a problem, and that's how his name is pronounced, not Jacques. Jaques has a problem with Duke Senior and others hunting. Why? It's not because he's a PETA member, he's not an animal rights person, he's not a vegan. What's his problem with when he finds, we're going to see, I think it is in Act 2, late scene Act 1, when he comes across a wounded deer. Drives me crazy when I drive around Murfreesboro. And I'll see a dead deer on the side of the road, and there'll be some woods. That's the deer's home. It's not Duke Senior's. That's where the deer belongs. Who's the interloper? We are. Duke Senior and his following are. If it weren't for Duke Frederick having banished his brother would not be out in the woods killing venison, killing deer to eat venison. Notice the ripple effect of what happened here. Okay? It's like one person's sin, so to speak, just keeps going on. All right? So, that's all kind of background. So let's look at our dramatis personae. You've got Duke Senior, a banished Duke. Notice the name. Senior, what does that mean?
Eldest.
Elder, older, it's all it means. Older brother, Duke, older brother. Senior isn't really a name. Duke Frederick, his usurping brother. Rosaline, yeah, I'm going to just say Rosaline from here on out. Daughter of Duke Senior, later disguised as Ganymede. Celia, daughter of Duke Frederick, later disguised as Aliena, or Aliena, if you want, okay? So, Rosaline and Celia are cousins. Then you have Oliver. This one probably is Jacques. And Orlando, sons of Sir Roland de Bois. That's the English spelling of B-O-I-S, okay? If you want to say Sir Roland de Bois, that's fine. Then Amiens and Jacques, lords attending Duke Senior. And then Le Beau, nice good French name, a courtier attending Duke Frederick. Charles, a wrestler in the court of Duke Frederick. Adam, an aged servant. And it's thought Shakespeare played the part, if I remember correctly, Shakespeare played the part of Adam. Servant of Oliver, and then Orlando. Dennis, another servant. Touchstone, a clown or fool. Shakespeare loves fools. He uses them frequently in his plays. In comedies, they have a different purpose and function than they do in tragedies. In the tragedies, when you have a fool, that fool is a mirror. And what that fool does, in Touchstone does this, and Jacques does this both, to some extent in here, they point out people's foibles. They point out people's errors, okay? There are two ways of doing that. Your introduction talks about the different kinds of satire. Touchstone makes fun of it. Jacques, he's got a, who can I use to describe this? He's got a satiric wit that is unsparing in its cruelty. I mean, he just goes for the jugular. And he doesn't, there's no mercy, in other words, with Jacques. Touchstone there is. Touchstone, it's zinger and then kind of laugh it off. Jacques, you're just left hurting, okay? Then you have the, for lack of a better word, the country bumpkins. Corin, an old shepherd. Silvius, a young shepherd in love with Phoebe. Phoebe, a shepherdess. William, a country youth in love with Audrey. Audrey, a country wench. Wench, it just means young woman. It doesn't imply anything about her character. It's just a common term in Shakespeare's day, okay? And then Sir Oliver Martext, a country vicar, a country priest. Notice his last name. Martext. What does mar mean? To mar something.
Martyr?
No.
Ruin it, harm it.
You harm it, you deface it. Okay? So this is a preacher who mars texts by not understanding them properly. Okay? So he reads something and then misinterprets it. Think bottom. You know, the tongue hath not heard, the ear hath not seen, the fingers hath not tasted, kind of a, okay? And then the Hymen, god of marriage, and you have a bunch of, lords and ladies, etc. So Orlando and Adam come in. Now remember, Orlando one of the sons of, the youngest son, of Sir Roland de Bois, and Adam, Sir Roland's servant, now servant to Oliver, Orlando's eldest brother, because Sir Roland has died. Eldest brother gets essentially everything. But here we're going to be told the will of Sir Roland stipulated certain things for each of the other sons. As I remember, Adam, it was upon this fashion bequeathed me by will, but pour 1,000 crowns. That is, my father's will left me 1,000 crowns. And as thou sayest, charge my brother on his blessing to breed me well. What does he mean to breed me well? To marry me off well? That could be a meaning.
To educate me.
To raise me well. If you're well bred, it means you've been taught in all the appropriate niceties and skills of a proper living to your station in society. And there begins my sadness. My brother Jacques, he keeps at school, report speaks goldenly of his prophet. He's doing well. For my part, he keeps me rustically at home. The word rustic is tied to the word for home. Because home isn't an elevated place of society. Home is where you can, what's one of the phrases we use? Let your hair down. Why? Because out in society, you put your hair up. Out in society, you dress your best. At home, you can be a slob, okay? Or to speak more properly, stays me here at home unkept. That is, improperly dressed. For call you that keeping for a gentleman of my birth that differs not from the stalling of an ox? Now, you can read that literally and figuratively, and I don't remember if it's got no, he doesn't have a gloss for that line. Good. What can that mean literally? He sleeps in the barn? The stalling of an ox? Figuratively, I am treated no different than my brother's oxen. Okay, and notice he says, for a gentleman of my birth. What does that mean? We become so brainwashed.
A gentleman is somebody that had land.
And
Status.
high birth. Notice I use the term, where is it? Over here, high society. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. High society. You're not of the average middling class. And I'm intentionally trying not to use those terms related to class. It means you are of a higher social standing. Shakespeare was not born a gentleman. His father was not born a gentleman. Shakespeare was able, by the time shortly before his father died, to purchase for his father a coat of arms. A coat of arms for a man is a mark of being a gentleman. Okay? And then his died like 2 years later. All right? How many of you have seen the film Mary Poppins? Probably everybody has at some point. What's the significance of the scene towards the end when Mr. Banks goes back to the bank and the bank president does what? Anybody know what I'm referring to? He takes his bowler hat off and punches it through. That means you've lost your status. You're no longer a gentleman, so to speak. But that's also the awakening within that film of, for Mr. Banks, what is really important, and the status, is not part of it. Okay? So, for keeping a gentleman of my birth, he's saying, even according to the eyes of society, I am not being treated well as I ought to be. His horses are bred better, for besides that they are fair with their feeding, they are taught their manage. And to that end, riders dearly hired. Taught their manage means they are taught how to behave properly. You get a rider on a horse, and the rider does what? The rider directs and trains the horse. Which is better? I don't know if I should go there or not, but I will. Which is better? A dog wholly wild or a dog that's been well trained? Which is better? A child wholly wild or a child that has been trained, disciplined? He's saying, I'm wild in a sense. What's clear throughout the plays, Orlando is not wild. He has something inside himself that helps him manage. So, he says, but I, his brother, gain nothing under him but growth. That is, you can't stop me from growing. For the which his animals on his dunghills are as much bound to him as I. As bound to him. Their relationship to him is the same as mine. All I get from it is food, which is what his animals get. Besides this, nothing that he so plentifully gives me, notice that, besides this, nothing that he so plentifully gives me. How can you plentifully give nothing? We're going to see, we get to King Lear. Lear's going to ask his daughters, who loves me the most? And the one who loves him the most is going to get the biggest portion of land. And his first daughter lies, and his second daughter lies. His third daughter, Cordelia, which means of the heart, because she's the one he loves the most, she says, I love you as a daughter ought to love her father. Nothing more, nothing less. He's like, nothing? Nothing? Then you'll get nothing. Okay? Nothing that he so plentifully gives me, the something that nature gave me, his countenance seems to take from me. What modern topic, what topic of psychology has he just addressed? Nature versus nurture. And notice what he says. He hasn't given me anything, nurture. And what nature has given me, he's doing what? His countenance seems to take from me. Countenance there, line 17, doesn't mean how he looks at me. And it's not necessarily just behavior, your gloss, okay? It's the patronage that he doesn't give me. It's taking this from me, okay? He lets me feed with his hinds, deer, bars me the place of a brother, and as much as in him lies, minds my gentility with my education, okay? Look at your gloss at the bottom. With all the power at his disposal, undermines my right to be educated as a gentleman. Now, educated as a gentleman implies not just like, Shakespeare did probably, going to grade school. He means being educated in all of the arts and skills that a gentleman would need to be a gentleman in society. That means multiple languages, dancing, music, singing, probably playing an instrument, that's the music part, okay? Writing, including writing poetry, as well as just writing a script very well, horsemanship, martial arts, not kung fu and all that, but how to fight with a sword, how to arm oneself, all those things that make up the qualities of a knight, K-N-I-G-H-T, / courtier. Okay? He says, this is what bothers me, Adam. And the spirit of my father, which I think is within me, begins to mutiny against this servitude. His father's spirit within him, which says what? Who is his father? Roland de Bois, right? Sir Roland de Bois. He says that nobility, which is what? It's something he's born with. Okay? That's not something really conferred. Yes, somebody conferred by tapping his shoulders with a sword, knighthood, on Roland de Bois. Part of what Shakespeare is getting at here is, but real nobility, that comes from within. Read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Read Chaucer's Wife of Bath's Tale. Nobility is inherent. Okay? Oliver comes in. Okay? Orlando tells Adam to go apart and listen to what he says. And so we're going to hear a long talk between the two brothers. Oliver comes in and says, well, let me back up. Hold on before we talk about that. Second person singular pronouns. Modern English, you, your. Okay? Old Middle English, thy, thine. Thou, thy, thee, thine. Okay? The thee is used in different, whether it's accusative, nominative, etc. Okay? So you have the Y forms and the TH forms. We're kind of familiar with the TH forms because we still have floating around in our popular culture and consciousness the King James Version of the Bible with all the thous and these and thines, etc. Okay? And the assumption today is, oh, that's this elevated formal language you use to describe God, the deity. Not at all. Okay? In Shakespeare's day, both these forms, I'd have to be careful here, were sometimes in use. By the time Shakespeare is writing the plays, everyday ordinary use, you're down at a pub, throwing back beers, etc. You're standing in the yard at the Globe, watching a play, you're going to use these forms with everybody. Okay? For the simple reason that this, by the time Shakespeare is writing these plays, the TH forms are older. They're archaic. They're like early 20th century, late 19th century English to us. Read mid 19th century. Read Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, or read his second inaugural. That is not the language a modern American president uses. JFK modeled his inaugural on Lincoln's language, and everybody who's smart, who has to deliver speech, goes back and looks at Lincoln. Because Lincoln's regarded as one of the greatest speechwriters in American history, probably because he was well educated, how, by himself, with his books, he read widely, and he didn't have speechwriters. Okay? So, the Y forms, ye and you. Here's how they are used in Shakespeare and in other writings of this period. Now, again, they are intentionally somewhat archaic at this point. Again, everyday, ordinary language, they're not used. So, it indicates politeness and formality. That is the exact opposite of what we think today. We think, how are you doing is colloquial, familiar, you know the person well. In Shakespeare's day, when this was used, it was what we think it is, okay? But it wasn't. In Shakespeare's day, it was this. It was not like we use it today. So the U form indicates, you're speaking in a formal way with somebody else, and you're being polite. It's used to address a superior. Yes, Nev.
Are these forms as effectively equivalent to like du and der Status in Spanish, or du and sie in German? Or,
Yes, du and sie in German. I don't know the Spanish, so
or
yes.
tu and vous in French.
Exactly. That's exactly what they are. Okay? There's another form of pronoun which we don't have time to get into. Dies out in the Middle Ages. Wheat. Wheat is literally we two, the two of us, but it's never we three, and it's never you anybody. It is a pronoun that is completely died out, okay? Largely, these forms have died out by today. Nobody uses these. The only place you will hear these today in the United States is in a church. When somebody's reading the King James Bible, okay? Yeah, or that. You're reading Shakespeare, okay? So, the Y forms, ye and you, are used to address a superior. Whether that superior is one of age, like one of you talking to me, because I'm obviously older than you, or if I were talking to someone older than me, okay? Or social status. Social status, if I were talking, supposedly, to a senator. I say supposedly because supposedly a senator has high social status. The reason I say supposedly because the senator is actually supposed to be what? 2/4 us. Servant.
Of the people.
Servant of the people. So it should be the other way around. That's not how it is. And the third thing, in high society, this is used among equals, but not in lower society. Okay? So, the characters of the rustics in Midsummer Night's Dream, theoretically, they should never use this among themselves because they're not high society, right? The TH forms, thee, thou, thine, those are used by older people to younger people. Why? Because of this. They're superior in one sense. It's used by socially superior to socially inferior people, okay? And it's used by those who are intimately familiar. So what's meant by intimately familiar? Can be lovers. It could also be family members. Family members should be intimately familiar with each other, not in the romantic sense. Reason I emphasize or mention all this is Shakespeare plays with these pronouns. You will see literally in a single speech or speeches going back and forth between two people, they are going to drop into both of these forms. And what Shakespeare is doing there is he's indicating attitude. These lines, 39 to 75, these give us an example of it. You see it, and it's in almost all of Shakespeare's plays. Okay? Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 4, line 64 to 223. That's a long scene. This is where Hamlet goes and talks with his mother in her closet bedroom, and he's going to convict her of her raunchy, sinful, incestuous deeds, sleeping with her dead husband's brother, who is now her husband. Hamlet is going to go back and forth, and he does that on the basis of responding to how his mother addresses him. When she drops into this form, she's not doing it because they're intimately familiar. She's doing it to emphasize, Hamlet, I'm your mother. Don't you dare talk to me like that. And Hamlet will respond in a couple of instances using the same term. This also, should have thrown this in there, to indicate moral superiority. Because Hamlet's going to essentially tell his mother, Mom, you're a degenerate. Okay? So, the brothers come in and notice, they go back and forth. Oliver, for example, comes in, line 28. Now, sir, what make you here? What make you here? this could be politeness and formality. It could be because they are both of the same social status, and it is higher status, because their father was a knight, used among equals. Okay? Is he addressing his younger brother as a superior? No, he's not. So it's either this or this. Would you use this with your brother? Not really, unless there's some kind of strain. Okay? Orlando replies, nothing, I'm not talking. What are you then, sir? Marry, sir, I am helping you. Politeness, formality, possibly this. How's his brother is superior? He's older than he is. He's the heir. Okay? They go back and forth. Orlando, essentially lays out his bill of attainder or his grievances to his brother using all these yous. Oliver smacks him. What boy? Line 50. Come, elder brother, you are too young in this. What does he mean you're too young in this?
You don't understand.
Keep going. What's the in this? You don't understand what? How to fight.
Oh.
So when he says you're too young in this, he's essentially saying, I'm going to teach you a lesson. You smack me, okay? And what does he do? He seizes him by the throat. Look at Oliver's response. Wilt thou lay hands on me, villain? Villain. You low life indicates moral superiority. Okay? Used by older people to younger people, big brother, little brother. I mean, I'm 62. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. My eldest sister, still little brother, and I'm bigger in all this. Socially superior, he is suggesting that to his brother. It's not this one. I mean, yes, they are intimately familiar. That's not how he's using it. He's using it in these ways.
Could you argue that it is intimately familiar because they've gone from verbal sparring to actual physical sparring?
Yeah, I think the case could be, that case could be made. But I think these fit the context much, much better. When he calls him, what kind of language is you villain or thou villain?
It's an insult.
It's an insult. You don't insult somebody that you think is morally superior to you. Okay? I am no villain, and he goes on and does what? Orlando says, how dare you call me a villain? Why? I'm the youngest son of Sir Roland de Bois. By saying I'm a villain, you are saying that Sir Roland was a villain. The implication is villains breed. He was my father, he is thrice a villain that says such a father begot villains. Wert thou not my brother? Okay. How's he using it? Used by socially superior to inferior, but he's not literally socially superior. He's younger. He's not the heir. He thinks he is morally superior to his brother. And he might also be throwing the thou back in his brother's face. How dare you call me thou, pig? Wert thou not my brother, I would not take this hand from thy throat, till this other had pulled out thy tongue for saying so. Thou hast railed on thyself. And then Adam, for your father's remembrance, be at accord. Be at peace, be of one heart. Your fathers. Adam is over 80 years old. But he's what? He's their servant. He's addressing them as socially superior. He's not addressing them as being elderly superior by age-wise. Okay? Orlando, I will not, Oliver says, let me go. I will not till I please. You shall hear me. Why the you? politeness, formality, equals in terms of level of society. But again, if you think of that great chain of being, even within that, all those chains, each chain can be looked at under a microscope and you see more chains. Because even within a family, you have those chains. Okay? Eldest to youngest. Husband, depending on one's, theology, whatever, sociology, husband, wife, all the way down. Yes?
So if he's addressing him as an equal, even though they exist within those multiple chains, right? Then is it saying that the internal part of him, the internal nobility, is negating the fact that he is a younger brother in this situation?
I think possibly, to an extent. Okay. Oliver, and what wilt thou do? So when Orlando in that long speech, relatively long, 62 to 70 or so, uses all these yous, Oliver then replies with the thous. Well, at least once. And what wilt thou do? See, when Orlando replies with the yous, that might be a verbal or linguistic tell, like in gambling. Every gambler has a tell that they do something. It's a blink of the eye, it's a nervous twitch, it's scratching the ear that indicates they're bluffing or something like that. This may be a linguistic tell that Orlando is trying to diffuse the situation a little bit. He's trying to calm things down. But Oliver does not reply in kind. Oliver uses the thou. Again, lowering his brother. Big when that is spent. And what wilt thou do? What does Orlando ask for?
His inheritance.
Give me my inheritance, essentially, and I'll leave. And what wilt thou do? Beg when that is spent? Let's see, what story can you think of where a guy has an inheritance and he asks prodigal son? What is Oliver suggesting? You're going to be just like the prodigal son. You're going to take your inheritance, you're going to go off and waste it, and then what? Literally. Beg when that is spent? Well, sir, get you in. And he goes from thou to you. I will not long be troubled with you. You shall have some part of your will. I pray you, leave me. It's definitely not addressing a superior. It's indicating this and this. I think more so this, especially that. Why would you be formal among the members of your family? What does that kind of formality indicate in a family?
Lack of intimacy?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a strained relationship. Okay? So, Orlando says, I will no further offend you, etc., that becomes me for my good. Oliver says to Adam, get you with him, you old dog. What has Adam done to deserve that?
Nothing.
Other than, sweet masters, be patient. For your father's remembrance, be at accord. In memory of your father, get along. Okay? Adam is old dog, my reward. Most true, I have lost my teeth in your service. Just because of his age, he hasn't gotten him knocked out or anything like that. God be with my old master, he would not have spoke such a word. And Orlando and Adam walk out. Now, what has Adam just done? Notice he doesn't use you or thou. That is a verbal what to Oliver as he's getting ready to walk off the stage. Let me put it this way. It's a verbal version of what hand sign. Yeah, he's flipping them off. Okay? So, Charles comes in. And why has Charles come to talk to Oliver?
To fight Orlando, tell him about it.
Yep, lines 118 and following. But what is Charles warning Oliver about? You know, so he's the challenger. It's going to be a cage match. He's the challenger, which means I'm standing there. Anybody who wants can come up and try to take me on. He's heard Oliver's little brother, let me rephrase that, younger brother, is going to enter the list, is going to attempt to wrestle him. And notice what he says. Line 120. Orlando hath the disposition to come in disguised against me to try a fall. Notice, by the way, I think this is the first time disguise is mentioned. Disguise is going to be used a lot throughout the play. Tomorrow, sir, I wrestle for my credit. That is, my reputation. What's he mean? I'm not going to throw it. I'm not going to lose to your brother just because he's your brother. And he that escapes me without some broken limb shall acquit him well. Anybody who walks out of that ring without a broken leg or arm will have done well against me. Right? Your brother is but young and tender, and for your love I would be loath to foil him. What's a foil?
Like, in a play,
Yeah.
somebody that shines light on the other characters, right?
It is a person who is an antagonist to another character. You have multiple foils for multiple characters. Generally, it's an aspect of the main antagonist of the protagonist, okay? And it's a character traits in the antagonist that bring out positive character traits in the protagonist, okay? So here he's saying, I would be loath to foil him, and there he just means to oppose him and bring out his character. And what he means by that is he's going to be weak compared to me. Oliver, whoever plays Oliver should be some big weightlifter. I mean, not muscle bound, but hulking, okay, to look the part. And as I must for my own honor, if you come in. That is, if you suggest something, okay, he says, because of my honor, I'll have to defeat him. Therefore, out of my love to you, I came hither to acquaint you with all, that either you might stay him from his intendment, stop him from doing what he intends, or brook such disgrace as he shall run into. Or you will have to accept some disgrace because of what's going to happen to your brother. Because what happens to a brother does what? Affects the other brothers. Right? It's that old, more so Japanese notion than American notion today, that if you don't do well on something, what is it? It's a stain on the family. Oliver thanks him for his love. Notice, I thank thee for thy love, which thou shalt find I will most kindly requite. Socially superior to inferior, moral superior to an inferior, etc. Older people, because he probably is older. And what does he say? Have at him. I'm not gonna stop him. You know, we might be able to kill two birds with one stone here. You can increase your honor, and I can get rid of a brother I don't want anymore. Okay? Hey, when Shakespeare creates villains, he creates villains. So, Charles, if he comes, I'll give him his payment. Charles leaves. Oliver, now will I stir this gamester. I hope I shall see an end of him. I hope Charles kills my brother. That's what he's just told us. For my soul, yet I know not why, hates nothing more than he. My soul hates Orlando. And yet, what does he say there? And I don't know why. Why do I hate my brother so much? You know, maybe they need to go to family counseling. Yet he's gentle. Gentle doesn't mean soft and kindly. It partially means that. It means what? Noble. Gentlemanly. He has all the virtues of a true gentleman. Notice, Oliver is the eldest son of Sir Roland de Bois. He should be gentle. He should be noble. But he's not. Why? Again, where does gentility, where does nobility come from? How many have seen A Knight's Tale? Okay? Heath Ledger, thank you. Paul Bettany, bunch of other actors. What's the premise of that? Nobility is something not necessarily that is conferred. It's something you're born with, and it's something you demonstrate. And there's a great scene when Edward the Black Knight when Heath Ledger's character, Liechtenstein, adopted name, Will Thatcher, is in the stocks. People are throwing cabbages and stuff at him. And the Black Knight, Edward the Prince, shows up, reveals himself, or backs up, and he goes right up to his face and he says, "You have nobility." He goes, "How do I know?" "Your men love you." Well, his men are his equals. And he goes, and that's a mark of itself, of nobility. He goes, and more than that, you joust when you shouldn't. Because there was an earlier tournament when Edward was in the jousting lists, and Will was in the jousting list, and word gets received by Will's men, it's the Black Knight, it's Prince Edward. Because traditionally, this actually happened, traditionally in the list, when royalty entered, if it was your time to ride against royalty, you're supposed to tilt your lance up, which means I forfeit. Why? All because of this stuff. You are not of the same class to even dare oppose someone like that. And Will's like, the hell with it. Son of a Thatcher, low born, is going to challenge, okay? And they have this little run-in, and the prince says in that scene, "You knew." And he goes, Back to the stocks. You joust when you shouldn't, and that shows nobility too. Actually, he's covered up at this point. Then he throws his hood back and says, "My royal genealogists have found he's got royal blood." Lying through his teeth, okay? So, he's gentle, never schooled, and yet learned, full of noble device. Okay? 158, lofty aspiration. Possibly. I think noble device can also mean noble characteristics. It's like nobility just oozes from him in his behavior, because that's what shows nobility. It's one's behavior. J.K. Rowling alludes to that in the second Harry Potter book. When Dumbledore tells Harry, "It is our choices, Harry, far more than our abilities, that show what we truly are." Because every choice Harry makes is for one thing, it's to defend others. It's never for himself. He said, and what his point is, that's noble. That's nobility. Right? Of all sorts enchantingly beloved. What's the all sorts? Low-born people and high-born people. They all love him. And indeed, so much in the heart of the world, and especially of my own people who best know him, that I am altogether misprized. Misprized, undervalued, scorned. So why does he hate him? He just told us why, even though he said, my soul knows not why, you know. John Milton, Paradise Lost. Why does Satan try to overthrow God? And then, after he's in hell, why does he try to overthrow, successfully, humanity? Because of his sense of injured merit. God didn't respect him enough. And because God made humanity in his image, because he can't strike back at God, he's like the neighborhood bully who kicks your cat instead. I mean, a hood from The Godfather. I mean, he puts a head in your bed because he can't strike the dawn, you know. He's misprized. With my brother around, nobody does what? Looks at me. Get rid of the brother, people will look at me. But it shall not be so long. Clock's ticking. This wrestler shall clear all.
You can search for it in the
Oh, shut up, Siri.
Somebody just have to take it off. Just
Yeah, just get rid of it all. Nothing remains but that I kindle the boy thither, which now I'll go about. That is, Charles came to tell him, your brother wants to fight me. I don't want to, because I'll kill him or hurt him. But I will if he challenges me. Oliver says, don't worry, go ahead and battle him. And now he says, and now I'm going to kindle him. What do you do when you kindle something?
Stoke the fire.
You build that fire up, okay? Act 1, Scene 2. Enter Celia and Rosalind, okay? You get a lot of thys and thous and yous and yours, etc. And what do we hear from these two? What do we find out about Rosalind and Celia? First of all, they love each other. This is not romantic erotic love. This is not homoerotic, or what's the female version for homo? Homo means man, doesn't mean, well, it does. Gynoerotic, whatever.
I thought it meant like sing.
It does. But homo is also man. Anyways, we could go off on that rabbit trail and never come back. So they talk about their fathers and, you know, Rosalind's father being banished and blah, blah. So, 29, Rosalind. What shall be our sport then? That is, how are we going to pass our time? Celia, let us sit and mock the good housewife Fortune from her wheel. Okay? The goddess Fortuna, portrayed classically up through Shakespeare's day as having a wheel. And she sits there, she's blind, okay? And she spins her wheel. And the wheel goes like this, and the wheel goes like that. Okay? What's meant by that? Go back a few hundred years. The Roman writer Boethius wrote a book called The Consolation of Philosophy because he needs to be consoled by wisdom, because he's in jail. Real character, all of this really happened, okay? He's in jail, supposedly, for plotting against the Ostrogothic king Theodoric. He and Theodoric were like this. They were buddies. Good friends. Boethius was a walking, talking, living, breathing Encyclopedia Britannica. He did everything. Translated Greek texts into Latin, etc. Okay? Somebody tells Theodoric, Boethius is plotting against you. throws him in jail, capital punishment. No trial, okay? So he's sitting essentially in jail awaiting his death, moaning and griping and bitching about how unfair life is. I mean, he had everything. And so he, Boethius, the author, writes a book called The Consolation of Philosophy. And it's not how about reading Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates can make you feel better. It's about how wisdom, philosophy, the love of wisdom, how wisdom can teach you to bear and endure whatever life has to throw at you. Okay? And he gives very particular reasons which we won't go into. They're ultimately theological. All right? But in that, he talks about the goddess Fortuna. He's not the only one. You have Fortuna back in the ancient Greek tragedies. Okay? Fortuna rules, according to Boethius' portrayal at least, rules the world. Fortuna rules as a governor of God. God makes Fortuna, says, you're to govern what happens down there on the world. God can intervene, he can overrule, okay? But Fortuna dictates what happens. Sometimes that flows from our actions. Sometimes it opposes our actions. In the case of Boethius, Boethius did nothing to deserve this. He was totally innocent. We know that. He was not involved at all. He was executed, by the way. Anecdotally, he was executed by leather rope being wound around his head, tightened, and then wetted. If you know what happens to leather when it gets wet, it shrinks. So it shrinks, and then they tighten it more, and then they wet it again. And his head exploded. Okay? Very gruesome way to die. You gotta, man, those Germans come up with, okay? Just think of them as kind of early Gestapo. So, let's mock fortune.
Why?
Well, why mock fortune?
I mean, they say why, but I don't feel like that's a good idea.
Why is Duke Sr. banished? That was unfortunate. See, Duke Sr. had been up here. And fortune went, and Duke Sr. started to fall. Now Duke Frederick is up here. The only problem with fortune's wheel, it keeps turning. You don't want to be on this side of fortune's wheel. You want to be on this side. Because even when you're here, odds are you're going to rise. You don't want to be here. We're going to hear in Hamlet. Hamlet talks to his two friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He asks them about fortune, and they say, faith were not the button on her cap, the very top thing, nor are we beneath her feet. They say, faith her private's we, which becomes the title of an autobiography of some writer. Her private's we, around her middle, dirty joke, okay? Which will, when we get to there. So, that her gifts may henceforth be bestowed equally. Let's mock her. Why? So that she will learn to be, what one word would we use to describe giving her gifts equally? One word. Life should be fair. That's it. It's not fair. Rosaline, I wish we could. For her benefits are mightily misplaced. Now, what do you think she means by that? Why is your father now Duke? And the bountiful blind woman doth mistake in her gifts. Ooh, now she gets not anything about the Duke in her gifts to women. Why hasn't fortune given us, women, the gifts that we want? 'Tis true. For those that, and I think Celia takes Rosaline's meaning slightly differently. For those that she makes fair, she scarce makes honest, and those that she makes honest, she makes very ill-favoredly. There is a notion in Shakespeare's day, this isn't just Shakespeare, that beautiful women, gorgeous women, are untrustworthy. They're not going to be faithful. Ugly, foul, deformed women, you don't ever have to worry about them cheating on you. Why? Because who's going to want to with her? We see this in Chaucer's Wife of Bath's Tale. You have the ugly lady who gives the knight in the Wife of Bath's Tale a choice. He's forced to marry her. She's hideously ugly, 1,000 years old, folds everywhere about her, okay? And she said, you can either have me like this, ugly and foul, but I'll be faithful and true, or you can have me swimsuit model, but I won't be true, and there will be a path beaten to your door from all the men who are going to be coming in and out. There'll be a turnstile on the door, and okay? And he says, you decide. And so he gives her mastery, and she says, good answer. You get me both. That is, I will be beautiful and fair and true and loyal, etc. Okay? Rosaline. So, Celia, though she makes honest, she makes ill-favored. Though she makes fair, she doesn't make honest. Honest there means faithful, true. True as in upright, not true as in speaking the truth. Rosaline, nay, now thou goest from fortune's office to nature's. What does she mean? Fortune's office, fortune's duties to nature's. It's not fortune that makes someone foul or fair. That's birth. That's genetics. Fortune involves more how you use it. In other words, don't ascribe to fortune our, women's, behaviors. Fortune reigns in gifts of the world, like riches, accidents, health, okay? Not in the lineaments, the sinews, the muscle, the bones of nature. So, touchstone comes in. No, when nature hath made a fair creature, may she not by fortune fall into the fire? What's meant by fire? I don't think she means a literal fire.
Hell.
What causes one to fall into hell?
Sin.
Keep going. What does sin come from? That is, the actual doing of the sin. What comes before that?
Temptation.
Bingo. To fall into the fire. Nature makes women beautiful and ugly, etc. But it's what? It's fortune that helps us go one way or the other. Not necessarily dictates. Fortune just merely arranges the furniture that can lead you one way or another. Okay? So Touchstone comes in, and they talk back and forth, and Touchstone makes a lot of puns. Touchstone's a clown. He's literally a clown. He's dressed as a court jester. He's got motley on, multicolored clothing. It's his job to make the king/duke laugh. And pretty much everybody. But being a court jester, that gave him license to say certain things that nobody else could say. Why? I'm a fool. I don't know any better. All right? Shakespeare, as I said before, loves fools. And that's because the fool has an old tradition. Fools, what's a fool? This isn't necessarily the biblical, the Old Testament, Psalms. A fool is one who says there is no God. It's not that. A fool is someone, today we would say, maybe someone with a very low IQ, someone possibly suffering from Down syndrome, who can't speak properly, who has a simplistic view of reality, okay? these are perceptions. These are not me saying these things, all right? All that kind of stuff. Someone who's extremely naive and gullible, okay? Who believes things that may not be. In the Harry Potter series, what's her name? Luna. Luna Lovegood. What's her nickname? Loony. We say somebody who's loony is someone not dealing with a full deck. Her last name is more important than her first name, however. Lovegood means love the good. We could get into platonic stuff. I had written that right here the other day. I had a son with summum bonum, the highest good. In that platonic idea of the allegory of the cave, we're down here in the shadows now. We ought to be seeking the highest good. The highest good isn't the sun. The highest good is the light, the true illumination. That's God. That goes back to ancient Greek philosophy. The highest good was God. Socrates was put to death for teaching there's one monotheistic being, not the gods. And because of that, he was labeled an atheist. He's like, in his defense, how can I be an atheist? I believe there is a God. I don't believe in all these stupid gods that are nothing but blown up people. I mean, you got Zeus moving around, sleeping with anything that moves. That's more like a human. How dare you attribute that to the highest good, the principle of divinity, so to speak, okay? So, they talk back and forth, and he brings up Sir Frederick, he brings up Rosalind's father, and top of my page 301, line 83, Celia says to speak no more of her father. There's tension there. Okay, bear in mind that great chain of being, it's now all out of whack because Frederick has usurped the authority of senior. So all out of whack means within families, within political structures, within society. So Touchstone replies when she says, "If you talk any more about my father, you'll be whipped. The more pity that fools may not speak wisely what wise men do foolishly." What's he mean? What is the job of the fool? To speak wisely what wise men do foolishly. What does every president really need around him or her?
Good advisors.
Define good advisors.
Someone who will actually tell you when you're messing up.
What does it seem? Almost no presidents have had for a long time, my opinion, my political opinion, have had for a long time. Someone who will say, "George, what a dumbass idea. Joe, the border, you can stop this right now. Trump, what are you thinking?" Me, whatever it is. He's saying fools, the kind of people he's talking about, should speak wisely about wise men's foolishness. Hold the mirror up to nature and go, look. SNL used to be great at this 30 and 40 years ago. Because what would they do? They do skits based upon not a president's personality per se. They do it based upon the president's actions. Okay? To point out folly. The purpose of satire is twofold. To show someone the error of his or her ways, and what's the second part? It's not just to poke fun at. That's the first part. The second part is to get them to change their ways. There's always a teaching component. It's not just ridicule. Ridicule is involved. But you ridicule for the purpose of getting them to stop making the same mistakes over and over again. Or, as Oberon says, maybe they're not mistakes. Oberon says to Puck, still thou mistakest. Still doesn't mean even now. Still there means constantly, consistently. No one can always make that mistake. It's not a mistake, it's intentional. Okay? So, LeBeau comes in, and we find out LeBeau tells them about Charles the wrestler, mentions Orlando. Okay? We have the scene, the Duke comes in, Orlando comes in, and let's see here. Meets Rosaline and Celia. They talk a little bit. There's a little bit of flirting, and Orlando says 175. I'm not even going to get close to Act 2 today. I beseech you, punish me not with your hard thoughts, wherein I confess me much guilty to deny so fair and excellent ladies anything, but let your fair eyes and gentle wishes go with me to my trial, wherein if I be foiled, there is but one shame that was never gracious, if killed but one dead that is willing to be so. Okay, stop there for a moment. What does that indicate on the part of Orlando?
He's willing to die.
Does he seem maybe a little bit more than just willing to die?
He's pretty bummed.
Like, this would be a good way to go out. I shall do my friends no wrong, for I have no one to lament me. Damn. Why go on? Notice, this is a quote-unquote comedy. What is Orlando talking about? Hamlet's to be or not to be speech. Whether 'tis nobler to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, blah, 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 or to end them. His life is bleak at this point. He's got nothing seemingly to live for. He needs a purpose. He says, I shall do my friends no wrong, for I have none to lament me. I will do the world no injury, for in it I have nothing. Only in the world I fill up a place which may be better supplied when I have made it empty. And J.K. Rowling must have been really familiar with Shakespeare, because I think there's a possible tenuous link. Very last novel opens. Harry's getting ready to leave the Dursleys' house. And there's a scene with Harry and Dudley. And Harry makes the comment that Dudley and the others think he's a waste of space. And Dudley says, I don't think you're a waste of space. And everybody else is clueless as to what that means. Harry interprets it. Harry says, coming from Dudley, that's like, I love you. Notice the difference between being a waste of space. Okay, what is space? It's nothingness. It's emptiness. So a waste of nothingness to, Harry interprets what Dudley said to, I love you. That is the exact opposite. There is a fillingness, a fullness there. Okay? Orlando doesn't have that. Orlando says the world, in one sense, will be better. Why? Because something else will come to fill this vacuum. He's essentially saying, I am a vacuum. There is nothing here. Rosaline, the little strength that I have, I would it were with you. Celia, mine too. Yay, Orlando. What are they both saying? You're not a waste of space, Orlando. You're not a nothingness. Okay? Charles, where is this young snot? Where is this young gallant? Okay? And Orlando comes in, Orlando defeats Charles. How badly does he defeat Charles? Charles is unconscious and has to be born out. Duke Frederick asks, "Who are you?" Orlando says, "The youngest son of Sir Roland de Bois. I would thou hadst been son to some man else." I would. W-O-U-L-D there goes back to the Old English verb, and it means desire, wish. I wished, I desired. You were son of somebody else. Why? Because the world esteemed thy father honorable. What does the world mean? Everybody out there. But I did find him still mine enemy. Still. Always. Constantly. What does that tell us about Duke Frederick?
Maybe he's not a great guy.
If the world esteemed Sir Roland honorable, and he's the only one who finds him an enemy, maybe there's a problem with him. Thou shouldst have better pleased me with this deed hadst thou descended from another house. But fare thee well, thou art a gallant youth. I would thou hadst told me of another father. In other words, all right, go away. Damn. If only you could say you were the son of Sir Williams, whatever. Okay? Celia comes in, or Celia speaks to Rosaline. Orlando says to no one in particular some lines. Rosaline says to Celia, my father loved Sir Roland. And what's her implication?
Her father's good.
Her father was good, so Roland was there for good. Ergo, his son is good. Ergo, my father loved his father. I should love him. I mean, that's going to come out pretty quickly. Casillo's going to go, wait a second. Just because your father loved him doesn't mean you should love him too. Okay? So, she says, and I'm going to stop with this, 242, Sir, you have wrestled well and overthrown more than your enemies. Celia says, let's go. Rosaline, have with you, fare you well. Orlando then says, with passion hangs these weights upon my tongue, I cannot speak to her, yet she urged conference, that is, she wanted to talk. O poor Orlando, thou art overthrown. So she says, you overthrew more than your enemies, meaning smitten. She has fallen. She's been thrown. And Orlando replies, after she leaves, because he's tongue-tied in her presence, just like Theseus talked about people coming to talk to him, he says, I am overthrown. And we're told right there, they're both smitten with each other. And yet they're going to be separated. Okay? All right, did not get nearly to where I needed to get. So, we will pick up on Tuesday. With 1-3, parting words. LeBeau comes in and tells them what? What's going to happen to Rosaline? Yep. The Duke is banishing her. Okay? And then we're going to see, beginning Act 1, Scene 3, we're going to see Rosaline talk with Duke Frederick, and he's essentially going to tell her